Hello friend, welcome to Stories by Tochi. We bring you interesting folk tales. Please don't forget to hit the like button, please share, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for doing so. Now let's get into the story. The night air was thick with the scent of damp earth as Bianca sat on the edge of her bed, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. The dim glow from the screen cast a faint light over her worried face. She had just ended another call with her landlord. This time, his voice was sharp, impatient. By the end of the month, Bianca. No more excuses. The words rang in her head, sending a shiver down her spine. She had no options left. Her parents lived in another town, struggling with their own financial burdens. She couldn't bring herself to add to their worries. Most of her friends lived on campus, their small dorm rooms barely big enough for themselves, let alone an extra person. The reality of her situation weighed on her like a stone. She needed a place to stay, and she needed it soon. Desperation forced her to scroll through her contact lists, searching for anyone who might help. Her eyes landed on a familiar name, Collins. He had always been a good friend, though they hadn't spoken much since he moved abroad. Without thinking twice, she sent him a message, explaining her situation in hurried words, her fingers trembling as she typed. It didn't take long for Collins to respond. "I might know someone," he texted back. Bianca's heart thumped with a mix of hope and uncertainty. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed again, this time with a number and a name, Clinton. Collins explained that Clinton was his cousin, and he had an apartment with extra space. Bianca hesitated, her thumb hovering over the call button. She didn't know this man. She had always been cautious about strangers, but she didn't have the luxury of choice anymore. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the button and listened as the dial tone rang in her ear. A deep, calm voice answered after the second ring. "Hello?" There was something steady about the way he spoke, something that made Bianca's initial nerves settle just a little. She introduced herself, explaining that Collins had given her his number. Clinton listened patiently, then after a pause, he said, "I have a spare room. It's nothing fancy, but it's decent. You can come see it tomorrow." Bianca exhaled, relief washing over her. "Thank you. I really appreciate this." She meant it. The next afternoon, Bianca found herself standing in front of a modest two-story building. The neighborhood was quiet, lined with small trees and neatly parked cars. She had expected something different, something old and cramped, maybe even a little rundown, but Clinton's place looked surprisingly well kept. The door swung open before she could knock. "You must be Bianca," Clinton said, stepping aside to let her in. He was taller than she expected, with a quiet confidence in the way he moved. His eyes studied her, not in an uncomfortable way, but with curiosity. The apartment was neat, sparsely furnished, but clean. A small couch sat in the living room, a single framed picture hanging on the wall. "This way," he gestured towards the spare room. Bianca followed, her heart still pounding. The room was simple, a bed, a wooden desk, a small window that let in just enough light. It wasn't much, but to Bianca, it felt like salvation. She turned to Clinton, offering a small, grateful smile. "I'll take it." The first few weeks in Clinton's apartment passed quietly. Bianca kept to herself, careful not to overstep any boundaries. She wasn't sure what kind of person Clinton was yet, and she wasn't eager to test his patience. Most mornings she woke up early, tiptoeing through the apartment to avoid disturbing him. She made sure to keep her things neatly in her corner of the kitchen and never left a mess in the shared spaces. Clinton, on the other hand, was surprisingly easygoing. He wasn't overly chatty, but always acknowledged her presence with a simple nod or a polite good morning. Some days she would catch him watching TV in the living room, legs stretched out, eyes fixed on the screen. Other times, he'd be on his laptop, working late into the night. He had a way of moving through the space that made him seem older than his years, steady, composed, as if nothing ever truly unsettled him. Bianca admired that. In contrast, she often felt like she was constantly holding her breath, waiting for something to go wrong. The weight of school, finances, and her uncertain future pressed down on her daily. But Clinton never pried, never asked too many questions. It was a quiet understanding between them. You live your life, and I'll live mine. But as time passed, small moments of conversation started to slip into their daily routines. It started one evening when Bianca came home to find Clinton cooking in the kitchen. The smell of spices filled the air, making her stomach grumble loudly. Embarrassed, she hesitated at the doorway, debating whether to slip past unnoticed. But Clinton turned, raising an eyebrow. Hungry? Bianca laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of her neck. A little. Without another word, he grabbed an extra plate and served her a portion. She wasn't sure what surprised her more, the unexpected kindness, or the fact that the food was actually really good. I didn't know you could cook, she said between bites. Clinton smirked slightly. There's a lot you don't know about me. That was the first real conversation they had, and after that, it became easier to talk. Some nights, when Bianca was up late studying at the kitchen table, Clinton would casually drop a comment about her workload. You should take a break before your brain explodes. She would roll her eyes, but secretly appreciate the concern. Other times, when she looked particularly exhausted, he'd slide a cup of tea across the table without a word. They never spoke about their pasts or got too personal, but slowly, the silence between them became comfortable instead of awkward. One weekend, Clinton suggested they go out for a walk. Bianca was surprised by the invitation, but agreed, needing a break from her books. They walked through the quiet streets, talking about simple things, movies, music, the strangest things they had ever eaten. Bianca found herself laughing more than she had in months. There was something easy about Clinton's company, something that made her forget, even if just for a little while, about all the worries that usually kept her up at night. At one point, she glanced up at him, realizing that, despite his quiet nature, he was actually really funny in his own dry, sarcastic way. The thought unsettled her. She hadn't expected to feel comfortable around him so soon. But the more they talked, the more she realized Clinton wasn't just some stranger who had offered her a place to stay. He was becoming a friend. The change in Clinton and Bianca's relationship was subtle at first, so subtle that she almost didn't notice it. Their conversations grew longer, their walks became more frequent, and inside the apartment, an unspoken familiarity settled between them. Clinton, who had once been just a quiet presence in her life, now occupied a space she hadn't realized was empty. He had a way of making her feel seen without overwhelming her, a way of listening that made her feel like her words held weight. But it wasn't just the conversations, it was the small things. The way he lingered at the kitchen table a little longer when she was studying, the way his eyes followed her movements when he thought she wasn't looking. And then there were the moments that made her heart race, the way his hand brushed against hers when passing a cup, the way his voice softened whenever he said her name. It wasn't dramatic or obvious, but it was there, simmering beneath the surface. And maybe she had been naive, or maybe she had simply refused to acknowledge it, but she hadn't expected it, when one evening Clinton looked at her across the dinner table and said, "I like you, Bianca." She froze, mid-bite, the air in the room suddenly feeling heavier. He wasn't smiling, wasn't making a joke. His gaze was steady, his fingers tapping lightly against the wooden table, as if waiting for her reaction. Bianca swallowed, setting her fork down carefully. "Clinton," she started, but she wasn't sure what to say. She had never thought about this, had she? Sure, she liked his company. She liked the way he made her laugh, the way he made her feel safe. But was that enough? He was older, more experienced, and despite his calm nature, there was still so much about him she didn't know. She felt like a visitor in his world, like she was still figuring out her place in it. Clinton exhaled, sensing her hesitation. "You don't have to answer right now," he said, his voice carrying no pressure, only patience. "I just wanted you to know how I feel." That night, Bianca lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her heart was tangled in confusion, torn between the comfort she had found in him and the fear of what saying yes might mean. Days passed, and Clinton never brought it up again, never pushed her for a response. If anything, he acted the same, as if nothing had changed. But Bianca felt it. Inside her, something was shifting. She started noticing the way her stomach fluttered when he was near, how she looked forward to their conversations more than she cared to admit. And maybe it was the way he gave her space, the way he let her come to terms with her feelings on her own, that made her realize the truth. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the city lights, she finally turned to him and said, "I think I like you too." The words tasted unfamiliar, but as soon as she said them, she knew they were true. Clinton didn't react right away. He just smiled, slow and knowing, as if he had been waiting for her to figure it out on her own. "Then let's take our time," he said simply. And for the first time in a long while, Bianca let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could be something real. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the world outside felt distant, wrapped in the stillness of the night. Bianca was lying on her bed, phone pressed against her ear, listening to Clinton talk about his day. His voice had become something of a comfort to her, steady, familiar. She listened as he spoke about work, about the little things he had done, the people he had met. She liked these conversations, these simple moments where nothing felt complicated. But then, in the middle of his sentence, his tone shifted. "Bianca, hold on. I'll call you right back." His voice was rushed, urgent, and before she could ask what was wrong, the line went silent. The call hadn't ended. Her screen still showed the active call timer, but Clinton had clearly forgotten to press the button. Bianca hesitated, phone still held to her ear. She knew she should hang up. It wasn't her business. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was something unimportant. But something in his voice had unsettled her, something that didn't sit right. So instead of disconnecting, she listened. At first, there was only rustling, the sound of movement. Then a woman's voice, soft, teasing. "You kept me waiting, Clinton." Bianca's body stiffened, her fingers tightening around the phone. Clinton chuckled, the sound low and familiar, but not in the way she was used to. "You know I've been busy," he replied smoothly. The woman laughed, the sound sending an uncomfortable chill down Bianca's spine. "Too busy for me? That's not what you used to say." Bianca felt like she was outside of her own body, listening to a scene that didn't belong to her. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and anger. She should have ended the call then, should have spared herself from hearing any more. But she couldn't. She sat there, frozen, listening as Clinton's voice dipped into something softer, something intimate. The words blurred together, but their meaning was clear. There was history between them, familiarity, something Bianca hadn't even known existed. And in that moment, the illusion she had built around Clinton shattered. When she finally found the strength to press the red button and to call, her hands were shaking. Seconds later, her phone buzzed again, Clinton calling her back, just as he had promised. For a long moment, she just stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. When she finally did, she said nothing, waiting for him to speak first. His voice was casual, as if nothing had happened. "Hey, sorry about that. Where were we?" Bianca swallowed the lump in her throat. Who was she? The silence that followed was deafening. Clinton exhaled sharply. "Bianca, listen. Don't lie to me." Her voice was steadier than she expected. There was no escaping it now. He knew she had heard. He sighed, and then, finally, he spoke. "She's someone from my past." "It's not what you think." But Bianca had heard enough. Whatever it was enough to make her doubt everything, and doubt had a way of unraveling even the strongest things. Bianca sat in the dim glow of her bedside lamp, her phone still gripped tightly in her hand. Clinton's voice lingered in her ears, repeating the same plea over and over. "It's not what you think, Bianca. She's just an old friend. An old friend. The words felt hollow, stripped of meaning after what she had heard. She wanted to believe him, to take his explanation at face value and move on, but the doubt had already begun to seep into her bones. It was the way he had spoken to the woman, the casual flirtation, the familiarity in his tone, things that couldn't be explained away so easily. Yet, despite the anger bubbling inside her, another feeling wrestled for control, the fear of losing him. Clinton had become a part of her life, a presence she had grown attached to in a way she hadn't fully realized until now. The thought of walking away, of letting go of everything they had built, made her chest ache. But could she stay, knowing that a part of him still belonged to someone else? She hadn't answered him yet, hadn't told him if she believed his excuses. Instead, she let the silence stretch between them, unsure whether it was meant to punish him or protect herself. The next day, Clinton showed up at the apartment before she could decide what to do. He stood at the door, hands in his pockets, eyes searching hers for any sign of forgiveness. "Can we talk?" His voice was softer than usual, laced with something almost hesitant. Bianca crossed her arms, leaning against the doorway. "Talk about what?" "About how you forgot to end a call before flirting with another woman?" She saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes, the way his jaw tensed. "It wasn't like that," he said. "She's from my past, Bianca. I didn't expect her to call, and I didn't want to be rude. That's all." She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. "You weren't being polite, Clinton. You were flirting. You were acting like a man who still had unfinished business with someone else." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "That's not true. I don't want her. I want you." His words sent a shiver down her spine, but she forced herself to stand firm. Wanting her didn't erase the doubt he had planted in her mind. But then, just as quickly as the anger had risen, exhaustion took its place. She didn't want to fight, not now, not over this. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know if I can trust you." Clinton reached for her hand, his touch hesitant but warm. "Then let me prove it to you." Days turned into weeks, and Clinton did exactly that. He stayed close, careful, making sure she never had a reason to doubt him again. His phone was always in plain sight, his words always deliberate. He took her on quiet dates, filled their nights with soft laughter and stolen moments that felt almost like before. Almost. But no matter how much effort he put in, something between them had shifted. Bianca still loved him. She knew that much. But love wasn't the same as trust. And trust, once cracked, never fit back together in quite the same way. Some nights, when Clinton held her close, whispering sweet words against her skin, she let herself believe that things could go back to how they were. But other nights, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was just fooling herself. Because deep down, she knew something that she wasn't ready to admit, not to Clinton, and not to herself. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and love wasn't always enough to make doubt disappear. The days passed with a strange kind of normalcy, but Bianca could feel the shift beneath the surface, like a quiet tremor before a storm. Clinton still called her every morning, still sent messages to check in throughout the day, and still made her feel like she was the most important person in his life. But no matter how much effort he put in, the memory of that night, the voice of the other woman, the way he had laughed with her, lingered in the back of Bianca's mind. She wanted to trust him, to believe that he had truly left his past behind, but doubt had taken root inside her, growing like an unshakable shadow. It wasn't just about what she had overheard. It was the way Clinton had reacted afterward, as if he had been caught off guard rather than guilty, as if he had only started caring when he realized she had heard. Some nights she lay beside him, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, wondering if there were other things he hadn't told her. She never asked. Maybe she was afraid of the answer, or maybe she simply wanted to hold on to what they had for a little while longer. But deep down, she knew secrets had a way of revealing themselves, whether she was ready for them or not. One evening, as Bianca sat at the dining table flipping through her notes, Clinton buzzed on the counter. He was in the shower, the sound of running water muffling everything else. Bianca wasn't the type to invade privacy, at least she never had been before. But something about the way the phone lit up, the way the name on the screen flashed in bold letters, made her stomach tighten. Angela. She didn't know the name, but something told her she should. The message previewed just enough for her to see the words, "I need to see you. It's urgent." Bianca's fingers trembled as she stared at the screen, her mind racing. It could be nothing. It could be everything. She knew she had a choice: ignore it, pretend she hadn't seen it, or finally confront the feeling that had been eating away at her for weeks. The water in the bathroom turned off, and moments later, Clinton emerged, towel draped around his neck, shaking droplets from his hair. His gaze landed on his phone, then on Bianca, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe even guilt. "Who's Angela?" she asked, her voice careful, controlled. Clinton hesitated for just a second too long. "She's someone I used to know." The careful way he chose his words made her stomach drop. "And why does she need to see you?" Clinton sighed, running a hand through his damp hair before sitting across from her. "She's pregnant." The words hit Bianca like a physical blow, knocking the breath from her lungs. The room blurred for a moment, the weight of his confession pressing down on her chest. "Pregnant?" she echoed, barely recognizing her own voice. Clinton nodded, his jaw tight. "It happened before you and I got serious. I didn't know until now." Bianca wanted to believe him. She wanted to tell herself that this changed nothing, that their relationship could survive this. But the truth was a sharp, unforgiving thing. "So while you were telling me I was the only one, you had someone else carrying your child?" The pain in her voice was undeniable now. Clinton reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The air between them felt heavy, suffocating. For weeks she had tried to silence her doubts, to push away the voice in her head telling her something wasn't right. And now, here it was, the truth she had been afraid of all along. Clinton had told her he wanted only her, but life had a cruel way of reminding her that love was never that simple. And suddenly, Bianca wasn't sure if she had the strength to keep holding on. Bianca sat frozen, staring at Clinton as if he had just spoken a language she didn't understand. The words still echoed in her mind. She's pregnant. It felt surreal, like a bad dream she couldn't wake up from. Her fingers dug into the fabric of her dress, her breath coming in shallow bursts. The room around her faded, replaced by the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Clinton, the man she had begun to imagine a future with, had just shattered that illusion in an instant. He sat across from her, tense, waiting, watching her process it all. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to force him to tell her something that would make this all feel less painful. But no words came, only silence. When she finally found her voice, it was smaller than she expected. "Did you love her?" It wasn't the most important question, but it was the only one she could manage. Clinton exhaled, rubbing his hands together as if trying to steady himself. "No," he said after a long pause. "It was never serious. It just happened." Bianca swallowed the bitter taste rising in her throat. "And now she's having your baby." She let the words settle between them, let the weight of them press against her chest. It didn't matter that it was before her. It didn't matter that it wasn't intentional. It still changed everything. Clinton leaned forward, his expression pleading. "Bianca, I didn't know until now. You have to believe me. If I had known earlier, I would have told you." His voice was desperate, but Bianca wasn't sure if it was for her forgiveness or for reassurance that things wouldn't fall apart. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, she saw the fear in his eyes. He was afraid of losing her. The realization should have softened her, should have made her feel in control. But it didn't. It only made her feel more lost. "What do you want me to say, Clinton?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "That it's fine? That I can just pretend this doesn't change anything?" Clinton ran a hand over his face, frustration seeping into his features. No, but I don't want to lose you over this. I want us to figure this out together. Bianca let out a hollow laugh, shaking her head. Figure it out? You're about to have a child with someone else. Do you even know what that means? She could see the conflict in him, the way his mind was racing for the right thing to say. But there was no right thing. There was no way to fix this with words. Clinton was going to be a father, and no matter how much he wanted her to stay, the reality of that fact would always stand between them. She rose from her chair, suddenly needing space, needing air. Clinton followed her, reaching out, but she stepped back. I need time, she said, voice firm. I need to think. She could see the protest forming on his lips, but he swallowed it, nodding instead. He wasn't going to push, and for that, she was grateful. Without another word, she grabbed her bag and walked out, feeling the weight of his gaze on her back as she went. The night air hit her like a slap, sharp and cold, but it did nothing to clear the chaos in her mind. She wandered aimlessly, trying to make sense of it all. Was she supposed to stay? To fight for a love that had already been bruised by betrayal and now tested by something even bigger? Or was this her sign to walk away, to save herself before she became too entangled in a life that no longer felt like her own? The questions swirled in her mind, but no answers came. Only the crushing realization that no matter what she chose, nothing would ever be the same again. And for the first time since meeting Clinton, she wasn't sure if love was enough to keep them together. Bianca spent the next few days in a haze, trapped between the urge to reach out to Clinton and the overwhelming need to distance herself. She avoided his calls, letting them ring until they stopped, her heart aching every time she saw his name flash across the screen. She wasn't ready to face him. Not yet. She wasn't even sure if she ever would be. Instead, she threw herself into distractions, burying her thoughts in schoolwork, long walks, and conversations with Collins, who had been the only person she confided in. You have to decide what you want, Bianca, Collins had told her during one of their late-night calls. Not just for him, but for yourself. And that was the problem, wasn't it? What did she want? If this had happened months ago, when she and Clinton were nothing more than friends, she would have walked away without hesitation. But now she was in too deep. She had loved him, still did, despite the hurt. And that love was a chain, binding her to him, even when everything else told her to let go. The decision she had been avoiding came knocking sooner than she was prepared for. It was an afternoon like any other, when a knock on her door shattered the fragile peace she had built. She knew it was Clinton before she even opened it. He stood there, looking exhausted, as if he hadn't been sleeping well either. His usually confident posture was replaced with something hesitant, uncertain. Bianca, please, just talk to me. His voice was soft, but she could hear the weight behind it. She stepped aside, allowing him in, though she wasn't sure why. Maybe a part of her was still waiting for him to say something, anything, that would make this easier. He sat down, rubbing his hands together as if trying to gather his thoughts. I know you're angry. I know this isn't what you expected. But I need you to know that I never lied to you. I didn't know she was pregnant, Bianca. And I swear to you, it doesn't change how I feel about you. She listened, arms crossed, her emotions tangled. It may not change how you feel, Clinton, but it changes everything else. The words came out sharper than she intended, but they were true. His life wasn't just his anymore. Soon, there would be a child, a responsibility that would always come first. Are you ready for that? She asked, studying him closely. Are you ready to be a father? Clinton exhaled, his shoulders slumping slightly. I don't know, he admitted. But I do know that I want to be with you, and I don't want to lose you because of this. Bianca closed her eyes for a moment, willing herself to be rational, to think past the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She wanted to believe that love was enough, that their feelings for each other could withstand this, no matter how complicated it got. But deep down, A voice whispered that love alone wouldn't fix this, that even if she stayed, this child would always be there, a reminder of a past she hadn't been a part of, a future she wasn't sure she could accept. She looked at Clinton, really looked at him, and for the first time, she realized something heartbreaking. Maybe loving him wasn't the problem. Maybe staying was. Because love was supposed to feel safe, and right now, all she felt was lost. She took a deep breath, her decision forming before she even spoke. "I don't know if I can do this, Clinton." The words tasted like regret, but they needed to be said. His face fell, and for a brief moment she saw the pain in his eyes. But there was nothing either of them could do to change what had already happened, and for the first time Bianca realized that maybe love wasn't meant to conquer all. Maybe, sometimes, love simply wasn't enough. Bianca sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor, her thoughts heavy and unrelenting. She had said the words, "I don't know if I can do this," and now there was no taking them back. Clinton hadn't tried to argue with her. He had just sat there, his expression unreadable, as if he had been expecting this moment but hoping it wouldn't come. Now that it had, the silence between them was unbearable. She had spent so much time loving him, convincing herself that what they had could survive anything. But reality had forced her to see things clearly. Some battles weren't meant to be fought, and some love stories weren't meant to last forever. The realization didn't make it hurt any less. She glanced at her phone, the unanswered messages from Clinton piling up. He wasn't begging her to stay, but he wasn't letting her go either, and that made everything harder. Part of her wished he would say something cruel, something unforgivable, so she could walk away without hesitation. But Clinton wasn't like that. He wasn't the villain in this story. That was what made leaving so complicated, because deep down, she still loved him. Days passed, and the ache in Bianca's chest remained. Every time she saw couples on the street, laughing and holding hands, it felt like a sharp reminder of what she was losing. She tried to throw herself into her studies, into conversations with Collins, into anything that would keep her mind from circling back to Clinton. But it was impossible to erase someone who had become such a deep part of her life. Then, one evening, he showed up again. Bianca hesitated before opening the door, bracing herself for whatever this conversation would bring. Clinton looked different, tired, resigned. "I won't ask you to stay," he said, his voice low. "I know you're hurting. And if walking away is what you need, I won't stop you." Bianca swallowed the lump in her throat. "It's not that simple, Clinton." He nodded, as if he understood, but there was something behind his eyes, something that looked like regret. "Nothing ever is," he murmured. They stood there for a moment, the space between them filled with everything left unsaid. Finally, Clinton exhaled. "I just needed to see you one last time before I let you go." His words settled deep inside her, an ache she knew she would carry for a long time. As the door closed behind him, Bianca pressed her forehead against the cool wood, eyes burning with unshed tears. This was what she had wanted, to move forward, to find peace. But why did it feel like she had just lost a piece of herself? She curled up on her bed, wrapping her arms around herself, as if trying to hold together the parts that felt like they were breaking. There was no denying it now. This love, as beautiful as it had been, had reached its end. And no matter how much she wished things had been different, some things couldn't be undone. Bianca knew she would heal, that time would soften the edges of this pain. But tonight, as she lay in the quiet of her room, the weight of goodbye was heavier than she had ever imagined. Weeks passed, and Bianca found herself adjusting to life without Clinton. At first, it felt like she was moving through a fog, going through the motions of her daily routine, while something inside her remained stuck in the past. She hadn't expected healing to come quickly, but she also hadn't realized how deeply intertwined Clinton had become in her life. There were moments when she reached for her phone, fingers hovering over his name, only to force herself to put it down. The space he had once filled now felt like an emptiness she didn't know how to navigate. Collins checked on her often, his voice a steady reminder that she wasn't alone. "You're doing better than you think, Bianca," he told her one evening when she admitted how much she still thought about Clinton. But was she? Some days, it felt like she was simply pretending to be okay, pretending to move on when her heart still ached for what could have been. Then, one afternoon, as she walked home from class, she spotted Clinton across the street. He was holding a small bag, likely from the nearby cafe they used to visit together. He hadn't seen her yet, but she could tell from the way he carried himself that something in him had changed. He looked older, weighed down in a way she hadn't noticed before. Bianca hesitated, unsure whether to turn away or walk toward him. Before she could decide, he lifted his head, and their eyes met. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, Clinton crossed the street, stopping a few feet in front of her. "Hey," he said, his voice gentle, familiar. "Hey," she replied, her chest tightening. They stood in silence, the sounds of the city moving around them, but it felt as if they were in their own world. Clinton gave a small smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I've been meaning to call, but I didn't want to make things harder for you." Bianca nodded, understanding. "I appreciate that." Another pause. Then he shifted, adjusting the bag in his hand. "I won't keep you. I hope you're doing okay." Bianca exhaled, her heart aching at how careful they were being with each other, like strangers who once knew every inch of each other's souls. "I'm trying," she admitted. Clinton's expression softened. "Me too." As he turned to leave, Bianca felt a sudden urge to say something, to make this moment mean more than just another goodbye. "Clinton," she called after him. He stopped, looking back at her, waiting. She searched for the right words, something that would capture everything she felt: gratitude, pain, love, and the quiet understanding that they had been important to each other, even if they couldn't last. "Thank you for everything." His eyes held hers for a beat longer before he nodded. "You don't have to thank me, Bianca. You were the best part of my life." And with that, he walked away. This time, she let him. There were no tears, no regrets, just a quiet acceptance that what they had mattered, even if it had to end. As she continued her walk home, a strange sense of peace settled over her. Love didn't always mean forever. Sometimes it was just a moment, a season, a lesson. And for the first time since it all fell apart, Bianca allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she would be okay. Hope you enjoyed this interesting story. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. See you again in my next story.